Welcome to the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, here's your host, Matthew Ablan.
Hello, and welcome to episode 68 of the Queen City Music Podcast. This episode of the QCMP is sponsored by Midwood Guitar Studio, Charlotte, North Carolina's own boutique guitar shop located in Plaza Midwood. Midwood Guitar Studio not only has the finest selection in boutique guitars, but familiar names like Fender, Martin, Taylor, Two Rock, and many others. Whether it's a guitar, bass, amp, effects pedal, or a much-needed accessory, the knowledgeable and friendly staff at Midwood Guitar Studio will help guide you in the right direction for your next purchase. Visit their website at midwoodguitarstudio.com or stop in to see their unique shop at 1517 Central Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina. This month on episode 68 of the QCMP, I'm speaking with Chris Suter of Ginger Cat Sounds, a boutique recording studio designed to meet all your audio production needs. You may remember Chris from episode 65 of the QCMP when he was on discussing his band Low Cats. But this month, he's back talking audio production, and what a great conversation we had. Chris Suter, welcome to the Queen City Music Podcast.
What's happening? Appreciate you having me.
Hey, man, good to have you. Good to have you. So I'm going to get to geek out today and talk all sorts of recording and audio stuff with you, too.
Yes, please.
So, Chris, let's jump backwards a little bit. Are you originally from the Charlotte area?
Not originally, no. I am originally from Virginia, Roanoke, Virginia, and I was there until I was probably 19 and moved to Baltimore to go to recording school, and then ended up in Charlotte after that, and just kind of bounced around a few studios in Charlotte.
So where did you go to school for recording, and how long were you there?
It was a pretty quick program. It was called Sheffield Institute of the Recording Arts,
Okay.
Which is a mouthful, but it was, I think, like 8 months or something like that. I was up there for a year, so was because it was my apartment lease, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I was up there for about a year, and then I found a studio in Charlotte to intern at, and I always kind of liked Charlotte because Roanoke is pretty small, pretty slow. Baltimore was quite a jump.
Right.
Charlotte was like a perfect in between, and it's pretty close to Roanoke. So.
And how long was the program again?
About 8 months, I think.
Oh, wow.
Around 8 or 9 months. So yeah, it was pretty quick.
So you must have put in a whole tremendous amount of hours studying.
Yeah. It was. It was, obviously every day. But I think it was maybe, and when I wasn't at school, I was obviously I was so jazzed about the whole thing that I would
right.
I was going to school and doing it, and then coming home to the apartment and just diving in and,
doing another 8 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you did it and you were studying audio recording, did you start with tape, or were things going digital at that point?
It was, it was pretty digital at that point, but when I started, it was all digital. And when I went, it wasn't until I went to school where they're kind of teaching you all of the things, and that was when I kind of learned a little bit on tape.
Right.
But it was pretty firmly in the digital realm by that point. I think there were still, everything was digital, but they weren't really using tape very much anymore. But it was still in the period where hardware was still a really big. They weren't able to replicate that yet.
Right.
So they were still using all the outboard gear, the outboard EQs and compressors and all of that stuff. But as far as tape goes, they were kind of moving their way out of that by that point.
So had you done any recording at all before you went to school for it? Were you kind of messing around on your own and learning it, or did you just go into the school cold?
No, I was in a few bands playing in my when I was a teenager, and one band I went into the studio and befriended the owner of the studio and just kind of fell in love with the whole process. And it was a really sweet deal. He basically just said, as long as I'm not using the studio, you're welcome to use it. I wasn't even interning or anything.
Wow.
It was kind of wild. And we're still good friends today. But he showed me a bunch of things, and I just kind of spent a lot of time there. And then it kind of turned into this, I know that this is what I want to do, and I'm really happy doing it, but I feel like it's not going to happen here. And at the time I was working at Advance Auto Parts, and I was just playing in bands on the weekend, and it was like, this is all that this is going to be if I don't make a move.
Right.
So I was like, I need to go to school and at least like kind of get the ball rolling and just get moving in some way or another. So off to Baltimore I went.
And so when you came to Charlotte,
Mm-hmm.
were you doing recording as you were doing in Charlotte? Were you, so you basically you finished school,
Mm-hmm.
but how much of a role was audio recording playing for you then? Were you continue to play in bands and recording them on the side? How did that work out?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I moved to Charlotte and I was, interning for a while. And then when I left that studio, I basically just bounced around at a few different studios around town. And I was doing a little bit of like hobby recording on the side of like myself and the bands that I was in. I was still playing on the weekends. I worked at a music store, as like my full-time gig. And just, still playing like cover bar shows and stuff on the weekends and playing in bands and trying to record as much as I could. But it was like, it was tough because when I moved to Charlotte, I was basically first I was living by myself when I was interning, and then I moved in with a band that I was in.
Okay.
And when I moved in with a band, it was like I had one small bedroom with my bed and a dresser, and like that I didn't have like any space to do anything, so it wasn't like I could bring people in and record. I didn't have anywhere to record them. So it was a little bit of like a struggle, but it was like, it is what it is. I was still taken by the whole thing. I was still like really excited about it and just kept doing it as much as I could.
Just into it.
Yeah.
And what would you have? Like, I'm picturing you with like a little laptop and stuff.
Yeah,
doing it on,
yeah. It was a Dell laptop, and like I think it was a Focusrite little 2-channel interface. Some really crappy speakers. But and the free headphones I got from the recording class.
Yeah.
But it was cool, and it was like it was in that time where digital was becoming the thing, so things were getting much more accessible. Plugins were getting much more accessible. Guitar emulation was becoming a thing, so digital like MIDI drums were getting better.
Yeah.
So it was like it was in that growth period where things were really starting to take off in that world. So it was really exciting because the barrier of entry was getting lower and lower. So before, while I was kind of like, like I said, I didn't have space to do much, but it was kind of in this period where you weren't needing as much space. Mm-hmm. I didn't need the big guitar amps and the big room to record real drums and this and that. I could still like kind of do my own thing with this limited space and the limited stuff that I had and still get a lot done.
Right.
So, which was cool. It was great. It was great for someone like me and a lot of other people like me who were just getting into it, and having so much at your fingertips was a godsend.
So how do you make the progress to opening your own studio? How do you go from, a small little bedroom area to like, hey, I'm going to make this jump and do my own studio thing? How does that come about?
A lot of different bedrooms in between. For the real big jump was really recently when we built the studio, the new studio, because eventually I moved out and I bought a house with my wife, and I was taking up 2 of the 3 bedrooms in the house.
Wow.
And it was kind of at that point where I was like, I had space. I was like an actual functioning adult and like making a little bit of money to be able to like afford to buy a couple of things. So I was getting more things. I was outgrowing the space. I was having all these people coming in and out of the house with the animals and the wife, which was just kind of weird. So I needed to make some kind of move. And we talked about moving. Actually, we went and looked at a house that had a basement, and it was like, well, I could do that, have its own separate thing. And then our realtor basically said, you'd be really stupid to move from where you are. So if you can build what you need, just do that. And so that's how it kind of worked out. It was kind of out of necessity. I was outgrowing the space. Also, not to mention, like I said, I was taking up 2 of the 3 bedrooms. If we want to have a kid, we're screwed.
Right.
So it was like, well, we need to make a decision then. So we built the studio. Not to mention we needed a garage, so we basically built a garage with a studio over top, and it's just been the best. I mean, 16-year-old Chris would be losing his mind. So it's been really, really awesome. And I made the jump earlier this year to basically pursue it full time. I kind of had been pursuing it, but it was always this kind of like, well, maybe one day, I'll be able to do that. But then once I got the actual studio, it was like, I gotta do it or I won't,
Right.
So I just made the jump. I left my full-time job, and it's been going pretty smoothly. It's been going great.
Well, you've opened the studio, and it's called Ginger Cat Sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go first with the name Ginger Cat.
Yeah.
Do you have a red orange cat?
Yeah. So I've got two actually.
Okay.
And one of them, her name's Billie Jean. She is
Off the Michael Jackson tune?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and she was always, even when I was like in our like small rental house, she was obsessed with being in the room with me, being in the studio. Yeah. She had to be like on the desk or on my lap, and it was like a whole thing. And I threw out the idea of naming the studio Ginger Cat at some point, and it just kind of stuck. And it's catchy, it's fun and short, so I just kind of left it.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've noticed that the cats, being a cat owner myself, my first cat, loved the studio. She'd actually come in, and I have a picture of her. She would sit on top of this speaker. Like she wanted to be right there.
Yeah.
And this guy, he jumps up on top of my mixer here, which is padded, and
Yeah.
he'll sleep there while I'm plugging away over here. And
Yeah.
they don't care. They just want to be there.
Exactly, and it's always been a thing with her. She's always been obsessed. She used to come in and she would sleep on the keyboard, on like the piano keyboard for some reason. I don't know. She's a weirdo, but also it's kind of like, it's adorable. But what if someone has a cat allergy
Right.
And she was not a fan of the door being shut. Like she let you know that she needs to be in that room. So.
Cats are something I read somewhere off topic from what we're at, but I read somewhere just about cats where they don't like closed doors, period, because they like to have full range of their domain.
Yeah, absolutely. My other cat is much more chill, and he'll kind of go with anything.
Yeah.
But this one is definitely, she does not like a closed door, and she'll let you know pretty quickly.
So Ginger Cat Studios, you opened it up earlier this year in 2023? Or did you start last year?
Yeah, well, I've had the studio for, I think it was maybe 2021.
Okay.
That the studio was actually complete and like being used, but it was this year that I like really made the jump to it being my full-time gig.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you are, I mean, the Queen City Music Podcast is a Charlotte-based podcast, but you're down in Fort Mill.
I am,
which is essentially, oh my goodness, it's know, it might as well be part of Charlotte.
Yeah,
because
at this point,
it's a hop, skip, and a jump, and you're right there.
Yeah.
So, what have the artists that you've been working with lately? Are they based in the area in the Charlotte area, or are they folks coming from different areas of the region?
Yeah, they're kind of all over the place. I've got I just wrapped up a project today from an artist in Charlotte, but there's another. Actually, I'm working on two projects at the moment from Charlotte artists. But I wrapped up one a couple months ago from a girl in Chapel Hill, a couple of Rock Hill people. So around Charlotte, Charlotte adjacent, we could say, But yeah, most of the people are kind of in and around Charlotte.
And is it just your clients now? Is it kind of like getting to be word of mouth?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Most of it. I mean, there have been some people that have come in through like advertising on Facebook, and which is a whole nother world that I don't really understand.
Yeah.
But so I've gotten some stuff like that, but a lot of it is word of mouth, which is really great, and it's a great way to start a relationship, knowing that there's this connection, and hopefully, or I assume anyway, that you heard that project and liked it. So, we're already starting off on a good foot,
So just talking about the studio, what are the services that you're currently offering?
Kind of whatever is in the audio sphere that I can offer. I mean, I have my hand in mixing, mastering, production. I kind of tell people like whatever I can be as hands-on or as hands-off as you need me to.
Right.
If you need, I'm working with a girl right now that she plays guitar and sings and doesn't know how to do anything else. So I'm building the songs from the ground up.
Oh, wow. So you're producing.
Yeah. Full on producing. But then there's some people, like the one I wrapped up today, that like she comes in with like really good quality tracks. She just needed me to record her vocal and then mix it, so I can do that too. It's really just a matter of what you need from me, you know.
Okay.
But I offer mixing, mastering, tracking, producing, you know, whatever you need.
Now, I haven't come out to see the studio. I haven't had much chance since we've been in contact. But
Yeah.
How large of a space are you in?
It's not enormous. I think if I remember, it's like 500 or 600 square feet.
Okay.
But it's like basically I kind of got inspired by this this video I saw a long time ago from one of my favorite artists, City and Color. Mm-hmm. They it was a video kind of documenting the making of one of his albums, and they were making it in this studio that once was a church, and so it was just this big, large room. Mm-hmm. Like everything is in the same room. The drum set's in the same room as like the mixing console and everything. And I just thought that it was really cool and felt very like intimate and collaborative. So that's kind of the vibe that I went for. I wanted just like a big open space where we're all in the same area. Right. It also helps because because the space is not the biggest. If I were to separate it up into a bunch of rooms, it would be crazy. You know, there would be no room in any of the rooms. So
right.
Just seemed to make more sense for me.
Well, some of the YouTube videos I've been watching about home studios and things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not equating, you know, your space as a home studio, but it in that sense, it's larger. It's not like a, Sony studios with, reverb and reverb chambers and all this kind of stuff. But what people are producing in their home studios is crazy. Really incredible today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even like, the biggest one right now is Billie Eilish. Like her whole team, her whole album was, it was mixed in a big deal studio, but it was produced just in their bedroom, and their setup is like, it's not really treated. It's just a laptop and like some decent speakers. And they're killing it. It's become such an accessible, medium to be able to just like, you can spend a couple $100 and have most of what you need to produce a record.
It's really crazy the technology and how far it's come with recording.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, at the studio, what's your DAW of choice that you're using to record with?
I'm in Pro Tools majority of the time.
Okay.
I use Ableton sometimes for certain things, but for the most part, I'm a Pro Tools guy.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I left Pro Tools, and I'm not nearly on the level you are for recording. But I left them a while ago. They just started to bother me. I think they started to become sorry, Pro Tools, I don't mean to slam anybody, but it became so proprietary with their iLock and this and that, and I was just like, you couldn't get anybody on the phone anymore. So I wound up switching over. I switched over to Studio One. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons is because like I could call them.
Yeah.
And somebody would pick up the phone. Uh-huh. I don't know if that's still the case because I haven't had to have an issue lately because they got bought by Fender. But how's do you have any? There's plenty of people on YouTube, who are having their love-hate relationship with Pro Tools.
Yes. I'm firmly in that camp of like, at the moment, me and Pro Tools are getting along. But I've had my downside. There was a time where I really almost switched over to Studio One, kind of for the same reason. I got really annoyed. I was having a really bad issue, and it was just crashing all the time, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was really annoyed at the idea that you have to pay for a support ticket to get through to Pro Tools, which just really bothered me. So I put it off for a while, but then eventually I caved and I paid for it, and they helped me for like 3 months try to figure out this issue, and then eventually just stopped responding. And it was like,
really,
yeah, it just felt so like I don't know. I just felt like I just wasn't important, and it really bummed me out. I finally ended up figuring out the issue, and it was kind of my fault in a way, but basically I just got fed. I think what it kind of ended up being was that I was using an older version of Pro Tools while a lot of my other plugins and drivers and everything were newer, up to date, and it was just not jiving. So once I finally got fed up and I was like, I'm going to update everything to the newest version of every plugin, of every this and that. And it's been smooth sailing ever since. But I absolutely understand all of the criticism with Pro Tools. It feels to me like they are a company that it feels more like a business to them, whereas it feels like, people like Presonus and Ableton, it feels like they care more about the community and they listen to their community.
I think they do, but I think it remains to be seen. I mean, I love Persona stuff. They're solid. Studio One's been amazing for me, but they got bought by Fender. So I'm going to reserve all my judgment to see what happens in the next few years, because Fender could say, hey, we're not going to do that, because Fender bought my favorite guitars, my Ovation Guitar Company, years ago, and I don't think they own them anymore. So I don't know if there's a level of caring sometimes with the products. They buy it almost like Disney bought Star Wars and Indiana Jones and whatever else they bought. And it's like, oh, we'll just kind of keep doing that to make money. And I don't know if they want to put the effort into making the product better. Yeah.
That's always, unfortunately, the gamble with that kind of thing. And you hate to see it, but I hope that Fender kind of understands what they have. Yeah. Because Studio One really is great, and a lot of people really, really like it. And it kind of seems to be really moving up the ranks in terms of DAWs. It's kind of on par with like Logic, the popularity of like Logic now, you know, especially for people who aren't on Mac, but it's great. I almost made the move when all of that was going down. I also am annoyed with like subscription models.
It's everywhere. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like the model for everything. And I don't care if it's DAWs or flying on the plane. Yeah. It's like everything is pay to play now. You want this, you got to play.
Yeah. And I luckily a couple of years ago, I basically caved on the subscription model, and I think I paid only like $200 for 2 years worth of subscription, which when I kind of did the math, it seemed like that's not too bad. I can swing that, I guess. So I did that, and it does come with support, right? So that's helpful. I haven't needed it, thankfully. Everything has been working really smoothly. But Pro Tools is great. I love a lot of things about it. It does a lot of things really well. And if I had to start over, I don't know that I would go with Pro Tools, but I'm so comfortable in Pro Tools by this point, and I started on Pro Tools. So it's like it's kind of just it's a force of habit at this point.
I think the DAWs have become so interchangeable at a certain point. It's like your way around it, but it wouldn't take you long to get into Studio One. Once you know the basics of recording, all you have to do is figure out how you want to do what you want to do in that software.
And a lot of times, I don't know for a fact if Studio One does this, but I know Reaper does it, where you can Studio One does do it. You can customize the keyboard shortcuts.
Yes.
So I can just everything I do in Pro Tools, I can map it to that, and it would work perfectly fine. And that's what I tell a lot of, like, I teach a couple of production courses from time to time, and people who are like looking for DAWs, I always just tell them that they all do the same thing. Yeah. It's just a matter of workflow and what you like. So just try the trials, do it, and go with whichever one feels right.
And I just saw, I can't think of the name of it on top of my head. There's a new DAW that just came out, and
oh, really?
Yeah, a fellow that I take some online courses with, he's been reviewing it, and he's like, this is going to be a really good software once they work some of these kinks out of it. He's like, this is fantastic. Wow. So it's very simplistic. It doesn't have looking at it, it's not as there's not so much going on. It's right there. So I'm curious to see where it goes. But I mean, I'm kind of comfortable like you with Pro Tools. I'm comfortable now at this point with Studio One, where I'm like, I'm not going anywhere unless I have to.
Unless you have to, yeah, absolutely.
So talking about DAWs and recording, are you recording? So we're going to get into all the lingo, folks. Are you recording mainly in the box? Do you do hardware? Do you have a mixing board at your place and external hardware?
I have the only like outboard gear that I have is a 4-channel universal audio mic preamp.
Okay.
And it has like a kind of an 1176 style compressor built into each channel, but other than that, everything is in the box. The way that technology has progressed in that realm of like replicating hardware units.
Yeah.
It's getting harder and harder to justify spending the money on outboard gear.
Right.
And, like probably my favorite compressor ever is an LA2A compressor. The plug-in version, I can't tell maybe if I had them back and forth, I doubt I could tell the difference. And you're always going to have people who say like, oh, it's nothing, like, but it just has gotten to the point where they're so good that like, it's getting harder and harder to say, well, I could spend $5,000 on this compressor, or I could buy a bunch of microphones or something that would, I think, serve me more, you know?
I'm going to need a new computer to record.
Yeah.
$5,000, we could buy a lot of computers.
$5,000 is a lot for a studio. Like, for one compressor, it's just, it's the way that everything is progressing, it's getting harder and harder to justify spending that kind of money on something like that, when really, I think a lot of it also has to do with like if you have like a really good quality what's the word? A replication of the unit, the plug-in version of the unit. If you have a good version of that, there are some that are better than others.
Yeah.
And if you have a really good quality one, it's kind of hard to beat. It's hard to tell the difference.
And if you know your way around it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you know what you're doing,
yeah.
I mean, dang, there's plenty of people that I've run into, because I've run into that YouTube rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Just about auto recording. And they always talk about stock plugins that come with your DAW. Like,
yes.
They're really good. So don't go spending, hundreds of dollars thinking that's the answer to everything.
Yes.
Because if you don't know how to use something, buying a more expensive one of it is not going to make it sound better.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're doing first.
And that's really the other side of that question, I think, is like, I have always, like, when I started, I had my laptop, I had one MIDI keyboard that I had for years and years, and I just kind of stuck with that. So I always kind of came up with this, like, work with what you have type of mentality when it came to audio production. So I learned how to do most of what I know how to do on stock plugins.
Right.
So not to say that there isn't benefit to having some of these like upgraded, nicer plugins that like add something to the sound, but I think you're 100% right. If you think that that's going to save your sound, you're missing the whole point. You need to know the fundamentals. You need to learn what compression does and how to properly use it before you start deciding, well, I need that compressor, I need that compressor,
Yeah.
So because of that, because I feel like I worked hard to master the work with what you have mentality, it's kind of hard to justify spending the money on an outboard unit if it's like, but I know how to get that sound.
Right.
And I think that there's a lot of value in like, but there's something special that this unit does. Mm-hmm. But I think at some point you get past like a point of diminishing returns, where it kind of does feel like, but is it $5,000 better?
And can you justify it?
Yeah.
Like, are you doing it because you want it, or because it's going to really help create the sound that you're looking for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, I am a fan of try to use my money as like effectively as possible. So if I'm going to buy something, I want to make sure it's something that it's going to serve me for a bunch of different purposes.
Right.
Buying one compressor, one outboard gear compressor, it's not to say I couldn't use that on everything, but like odds are I wouldn't. It's not going to serve me as much as like a cooler microphone or something like that, you know?
For $5,000, how many digital compressors can you buy?
Yeah, yeah,
And then
exactly.
you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I could spend this much money on one thing that's outboard gear, or I can spend it on 500 plugins.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I also think that there's something there's a lot of value in the idea of committing to a certain sound, and so when you have like, I think there's a lot of care that goes into a sound when you're going through outboard gear, and it's like,
Yeah.
whatever sound I capture is what's going to be there, so I need to make sure that I get it right, and I think you sometimes will spend a bit more time making sure that it's right,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, you know, nowadays everything you can just kind of record it all dry and then mess with it after the fact. So sometimes you just say, oh, I'll fix it in post.
So just talking about recording in general at the studio, do you find that there's certain plugins that you might lean towards when you're recording a certain genre of music? If you're doing like a folky kind of thing, or there's certain plugins, this fits the sound I'm looking for really well.
Oh yeah, for sure. There are definitely plugins that I lean on a lot. The Steven Slate bundle. They've got this virtual mix rack that's like, I mean, I use it on every single session, at least like multiple times throughout the session. And there are certain plugins like, if I want something kind of like smoother and rounder, I'd really typically go for an LA2A. If I want something that feels a little bit kind of crispier and more like modern, I'll go for like an 1176. I also think it depends on like, are you trying to I always say that there's two different decisions that you make. It's either a creative decision or a utility decision. Either I need to fix or repair something, or I need to creatively do something. So if I'm wanting to compress something because, these peaks are out of control on this drum set, that's a utility thing. I'm trying to accomplish squashing that sound a little bit so that I can then mess with it in other ways.
Right.
Whereas if I want to compress it in a more musical way, I want to add something to the sound that might influence the plugin that I use. That kind of more comes into play with like EQs. Yeah, there are definitely plugins. I think I did a video about like 5 plugins that I use on every single session, and the Steven Slate was in there. There are a couple of Waves. I think there's Waves has a couple of plugins that I use all the time.
I just bought some of their Abbey Road stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The J37, the tape emulator.
Yeah.
Which I really like, and then a friend turned me on to a couple of their. I couldn't even tell you the number system behind it, but they're their controls, which have been really good. They're really interesting kind of things.
Yeah, and I think that stuff is cool. I typically don't really like geek out on gear that much.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like, it's not honestly until like I have to kind of force myself to use new plugins sometimes because I just it's like, well, I know how that works, so I'm just going to use that, you know.
I bought a couple, and I don't, I was like, okay, I don't want to say I went crazy, but I bought a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And I just because I was like, okay, I need to get this. And then I'm good. Like, I don't think I need anything else. I'm not going to spend thousands of dollars on something thinking it's going to help me figure everything out. I'm like, okay, I've got these things that I want, and I see what they do, and I know what they do now. And they've kind of helped with my mixing as I've progressed, from knowing nothing into like, okay, I've kind of getting the hang of this.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I think that at this point, for me to buy a plugin, it needs to like really offer something that I don't already have. I have every compressor I could ever need. You know, it's like it's got to be something interesting, something weird. Something that will like, I don't know, creatively push me into doing something weird, something inspiring. And which there are a lot of. Which back to kind of to the Pro Tools point, that's kind of one of the bummers about Pro Tools is there are a lot of really cool boutique plugin companies out there who are doing really interesting, cool stuff, but Pro Tools has its own proprietary plugin format.
Right.
And a lot of times these companies don't make that. So it's kind of one of the other annoying things.
Yeah. Well, I think I've heard from a few people, like it depends on the system. Like if you might have a certain system and it might be a few years old, it might, like you were talking about Pro Tools, it might not take some newer plugins.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might cause you issues. And I've heard some guys having that problem. Even with Studio One, some issues happen. Oh, this doesn't work that well with this, or this doesn't work well with that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, Pro Tools has its AAX plugin format, and you can, but a lot of these other plugin companies are using VST.
Right.
And you can use adapters to like get them to work, but some of them adapt better than others. And it's just, I just don't really deal with that very much unless I absolutely have to. But yeah, there are a lot of cool companies out there doing a lot of really cool things.
Just to bring it back to the studio in general. So when you have clients coming in to do some work with you, what is their interpretation of how things are going to go? Like, do they walk in? Are they expecting like this massive studio with a massive board? Or are they shocked by, a guy recording in the box?
I think typically it's, I think that it is interesting kind of seeing the reaction sometimes, because the studio space is definitely nice and it's comfortable and vibey, and everybody like really loves the vibe. But when you pull up to it, it's a house, and you never really know what to expect, when you're walking into that kind of thing. Luckily, usually, and they're walking up the stairs on the side of the garage, so they're like, okay, what is this whole thing? And then they walk in and they're like, oh wow, this is actually really nice. Which is great. That's always like, it's nice to like put them at ease a little bit. Because that was always kind of a pain when I was like when I was in the house and I was in the bedrooms. It was like, you're in a bedroom and it's like you're trying to create a really comfortable space for people to be creative. Yeah. And you got animals and and it's just it doesn't feel official enough for some people. So I've really tried to go out of my way to make sure that the space feels creatively open and comfortable for people.
Well, I think you have to. If it's a business, and you're bringing people in, it's one thing. But if you are recording, let's say we're recording the podcast here at my home, I don't have to make you feel like this ambiance, because I'm not I'm not asking you for anything. I'm not saying, hey, I need to do business and we're going to be here, at multiple sessions and doing all this stuff. Like, come in, hang out, here's some water, here's a chair, sit down, let's just talk. Yeah. And it's a different thing when you're in business, or formally in business. Yeah.
And you're trying to, at the end of the day, recording music is a very like kind of creatively vulnerable thing. And I am definitely someone who reacts to my environment pretty heavily. Like I like the lighting to be a certain way, and I like that, and probably not everybody's like that, but I know at least some people are. So I know for me, I need to create a space where I feel creatively comfortable and confident enough to be creatively vulnerable, you might say. And so I felt like it was important to try to make a space that felt like that for other people, even if they don't know that they're being influenced by the space. Sure. I wanted to make sure that they were being influenced by the space. And luckily everyone has said that it feels very comfortable, and the whole space is like kind of really dark. Yeah. But it's like low lighting and this and that. So it's cool. I feel great in it. I love it. And I think other people, thankfully, have responded positively.
Well, I think the atmosphere that you record in helps what you are trying to do artistically. Yeah. The interviews I've read over the years from different performers recording, it was interesting. You could hear about, we went out to the country to record this because we wanted a more relaxed kind of vibe. Or guys are like, man, we recorded in this basement because we wanted something edgy and we just wanted to have a tense feeling on the recording. And the atmosphere that you're recording can really help produce those kind of sounds you want, whether you realize it or not, I think.
For sure. I think it has a really big influence on how you write, how you perform, just your general headspace.
Yeah.
You know, I recorded something recently on my own project that it needed to feel very sad, and I just kind of, for some reason, couldn't really get into the space, and I finally just basically turned off all the lights and I just lied down on the floor and sang it, and like that was what we needed.
There you go.
And so I think that's kind of part of it. Sometimes it's like you need to have an environment that is adaptable, that allows you to be adaptable.
Yeah. Well, I think I asked you that question about people's reaction when they first come in, because essentially, if you don't mind me saying, it's a home studio because it's at your home.
Yeah.
But I think what people's thoughts are from maybe a younger age of what a studio is like compared to the actual reality of what a recording studio is nowadays. You can go down to Nashville and, you know, they've got recording row of like home studios.
Yeah.
Guys who have converted their whole houses into studios, or you turn on, there's plenty of YouTube channels devoted to home studios and what people do in their studios, and how they create it whether it's in a room or a whole floor of a house.
Yeah.
Man, it's really incredible.
It really is. It's kind of, I mean, I think a lot of the, you know, we were talking earlier about the, just how much more accessible things are now. And I think that's really opened up the opportunity for a lot of people to really grow home studios. It used to be, and in some regards still is, that the home studio used to be the, you know, well, it's in my bedroom and it's just my like makeshift setup and whatever, I make it work. But now home studios are able to be like real deal studios. Yeah. And I went through a lot, you know, and during the building process, I wanted to make sure like this is built out to be an actual studio. It is technically a home studio.
Right.
But this thing is like, in every sense of the word, it is built like a real deal full studio. It just happens to be at my home.
Yeah, I mean, there's some incredible recording going on. We talked earlier about Billie Eilish and how she recorded her album in like her and her brother's bedroom or something. You know, off their laptops, and it's like, man, that's a Grammy Award winning album. And what are you gonna say? Oh, sorry, it wasn't recorded at you know, Sony Studios in with a 400 track machine or whatever. It's, you can't.
Yeah, that perception seems to be kind of fading a little bit, that you need all of that. Yeah. And it's becoming more and more proven by the artists that are just blowing up. There are plenty of artists on the radio right now that were done in home studios. Yeah. And it's just kind of the way that it goes. Technology just gets better and cheaper and easier, and it does make it tougher in some regard for studios to like stay in business. Yeah, it obviously is hurting their bottom dollar, but I mean, there's always a need for studios for people who just don't want to have to deal with it. But if you want to deal with it, it's very accessible and easy for you to.
I think there's a learning curve. Yeah, I think anybody who gets into it, for the most part, you're starting out small. Yeah, you're okay. I'm going to get a laptop, or I'm going to get a desktop, and I'm going to get some software, and then slowly but surely you start to develop, and you get a better interface. You get better studio monitors to record with. You get bigger screens, you know, and more. Oh, well, maybe I need to start thinking about some soundproofing in this room, and maybe I need to think about this. Okay, and I got to think about that, and then it starts to grow. Yeah. I mean, I'm talking to you. That's how it started for you, and that's how it started for me. You start very simply, and then you just it grows and it grows and it grows. Yeah, yeah, and you figure out like what you need along the way, which is I think it's a lot more valuable to start that way. Start really small and figure out like, well, I can't do this without this thing, you know, as opposed to just getting a bunch of things all at once and you don't really know what to do with any of it. Yeah, it's just like you start small. You get like, you know, I had these monitors and it was like, but I can't really hear like what my low end is doing, which is why my low end sounds like crap everywhere I listen to it. So I got a subwoofer, you know, and
It's just like you start to just figure out like what you're missing along the way and acquire it if you need to.
Yeah. I was talking to you earlier. We were talking about just technology, and you had mentioned the TikTok videos and stuff. And I noticed looking at Ginger Cat website that you have done some TikTok
a little bit.
videos. What are you looking to do with the TikTok videos? Or is it just an introduction to?
I have no idea, to be honest. I mean, I just
social media. There you have it.
Yeah,
I just
so I so don't understand the world of social media, but I like doing it. I guess I'm just trying to figure out a way that that I can do some things that I enjoy doing in the least cringy way.
Right.
You know, they're like I'm not going to be the guy, you know, who's like, hey guys, you know, welcome back to, you know, it's just like it's just not really me. It's
right.
But I like talking about studio stuff, and I like sharing it with people. So I want to figure out a way to do it in a way that makes sense for me and that feels authentic for me. So there are some things that I've done that are like, you know, I mentioned I did a video on like top 5 plugins that I use in every session.
Yes.
And that's a little bit more of like a formal thing that I edited and like did all the transitions and whatever. But then there's some that are like, you know, I put one out a few days ago that was, I basically built, I don't know if you know what a gobo is, but gobo is basically a big acoustic panel that you can roll around to like isolate drums or whatever you want to do. And I built one for the studio, and it just came out really good, and I was excited about it. So I just shot a video. I was just like, I just made this thing. It's really cool. Here are the latches over here, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Somebody told me recently that helped me a lot with it was like, I tend to overthink things very often. So I thought like, well, if I'm going to post a video, it needs to be like this level of production, and it needs to feel official and this. And she was like, when it comes to TikTok, people just want to like peek behind the curtain. You don't have to be so official with it. You can just kind of like have fun and just post random things here and there, and people dig it. So I've been kind of more leaning into that direction of just kind of showing things around the studio, hoping also that like there are people who are kind of maybe in my shoes who are like looking to start a studio and maybe just try to maybe get some ideas about, like I, for example, have one that I'm posting here soon, I think, about how I got climate controlled air into my vocal booth.
Yeah.
Or no, I think I posted that today actually. Trying to figure out how to get climate controlled air into the vocal booth in a way that isn't like loud.
Okay.
Because vents, sometimes, you know, you hear a vent in your house. Sometimes you hear it and it's kind of loud. You can't really have that on a recording. So just little things like that are like maybe someone else is having that issue and they need to like, maybe they hadn't thought about doing something like that. So I have no idea really what my direction is. I think I'm actually trying to kind of find my voice at the moment with it.
Are you doing any YouTube, or is it just strictly like TikTok?
Pretty much strictly TikTok and Instagram, but mostly TikTok. And they kind of go hand in hand, Instagram and TikTok. But TikTok, at least the way that I see it, seems to be, like I said, a little bit more behind the scenes.
Right.
Instagram seems to be a little bit more polished. Mm-hmm. But you know, it's all just magic to me. I really don't understand any of it. I've never really understood it. I never really cared to understand it.
Yeah.
I still don't really know that I care that much to understand it. I just know that what I enjoy doing, and I hope that I can share some of it with some people, and maybe they'll enjoy it too. I don't know.
But I think one of the thing about social media in that aspect is it's difficult because you want to utilize it to help your business or whatever it is that you're doing, but you also run the line. You run into the issue of am I doing this to help promote the business, or am I becoming a content creator for this?
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to chase my own tail. Like, oh, this has got to go out there because it's going to help my business.
Yeah.
But what if it doesn't help your business? Is it worth doing that much?
Yeah. I had this conversation with somebody pretty recently about trying to like figure out like, because you're right, ultimately the goal is to bring in more business.
Yeah.
I enjoy making the content, but ultimately, if it's not leading to business, then what am I doing?
Yeah.
And yeah, it does I start to feel that way sometimes when I'm like thinking about, I'm writing in my planner, I got to edit this video because I've got to get it. And it's like, but is it doing anything? I mean, I'm getting hits and I guess, but like, I mean, I haven't been doing it long, so I don't really know, but so far I've gotten 0 business from TikTok,
right.
But I think the romantic idea is that I'm going to like, strike gold and I'll post some stuff on TikTok and everybody will love it. And then Sony will hire me as an engineer, But obviously that's the odds are very slim.
I think the idea for social media for me, and I'm not in business like you are with the studio thing, but even just doing performing around town, is that you have a social media presence.
Yeah.
People can see that you're out there.
Uh-huh.
It's almost a new wave of advertising for free rather than taking out an ad.
True.
And saying, here's my shingle out in front of the house. This is my studio. It's like that's the new shingle.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, it's a way to show people that you're active and that you're doing things, and which you didn't really have to have before, not in that way. So it just sometimes it feels like this weird burden that you have to just do it because it's like, well, that's the way the world works now. So and sometimes most of the time it's fun, but sometimes it does feel a little like, why am I even doing this? It just feels a little silly sometimes. Well,
you had one TikTok which I watched, which was the studio tour.
Yeah.
And I like that. I was just like, great, man. I've never been to your studio.
Yeah.
But I've got a kind of a vibe just from the short TikTok, which again, you're there and you're selling it because somebody might not, who might not go to Gigicat Sounds right away, but they might look at the TikTok video and go, oh, okay, this is close to me. It looks like they got a nice little vibe going on here. Let me contact them and see what they do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think that at the moment, the way that I'm thinking about a lot of these videos is like, what do I like seeing?
Yeah.
And like, there's certain people that I follow, certain studio people that I follow that I really like that their videos will be very simple like that. Like this is, I haven't shown my control room, so this is what this control room looks like. And I've got this over here. And I just kind of like seeing what other people are doing. And so I assume that I like to think that if it's something that I like, maybe there's someone else who will like it too. But so far, I've definitely gotten a decent bit of traction, and it's been fun, but it's a weird world. I don't really fully understand it, but I'm getting a little better at it.
Well, I always say I'm not really sure anybody has a handle on exactly what social media is, and even to be an influencer, I don't know how many new people are making a lot of money trying to be social media influencers.
Yeah.
They might make some money. Or excuse me, they might have a lot of followers, but I'm not sure it necessarily translates into dollars.
Yeah. I think that you're kind of late to the game if you're starting now.
Yeah.
Some of the like pioneers in the beginning probably did really well and are still doing well. And you can still, I think today you can make some money really quickly, but you're going to probably fizzle out. So the idea of being a content creator that stays in business, I don't really know how you do it. There aren't many that have been able to do it. And a lot of times it turns into more like, well, now I have a following, so now I'm going to start a podcast, and that podcast brings in ad revenue. And so it really feels like the social media is a stepping stone to something more reliable in a way.
And you have to sell people on your personality. So you might want to be an influencer, and people might not like your personality.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was actually something I kind of had to come to terms with, because I was, when you, it's easy to like be yourself until a camera's in front of you. And then it's like, what does being myself mean? What is myself? So like the first like couple of videos that I made, I went back and like, had to kind of redo them because it felt like I was like performing or something. And it was like, you just need to like talk like you're talking to a person, like just be a human being.
Yeah.
And like, I think that if it's real, people will buy it. But sometimes it's a little tough to kind of get out of your own way and just be a real person.
It's you say it and it kind of makes me reminds me. Years ago, I was before I became a teacher. One of my professors had seen me teach a class for my kids.
Yeah.
And when I was student teaching, and we got in a conversation, I said, "Man, I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that." And he goes, "Let me tell you something. All the stuff you're telling me, you can learn.
Mm-hmm.
What you can't learn is people being attracted to your personality. And those kids are attracted to personality and they like you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't teach that. People either going to like your personality or they're not. And part of business, and it doesn't matter what business you're in, I don't care. If you can sell your personality, because you're selling you, the product is important on some level, but people are buying you as the salesman or whatever it is of the product.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
that's a big, especially like in a situation where you are sharing a creative space with somebody.
Yeah.
It's like we need to be able to get along, and I've told I really don't take things personally, and I've tried to sell that to people when they're most of the time before I start a project, people will come to the studio for like a consultation, and the reason I do that is for that exact reason. I want to make sure that we are going to vibe, that like you're comfortable here, that you feel like this is going to be a fruitful relationship.
Right.
And I'm not going to take it personally if you don't think that. It's like, I get it, it's fine. Because I know I'm not a bad person.
Right.
So if we just aren't vibing, then it's cool.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important, it's an important thing to try to establish early on, to figure out, like, because otherwise it just becomes like, well, you're just like, you're just a product, you're just a dollar, you know, it's just a paycheck or whatever. It's like, I want you to know that I care about this, and I want you to feel like we're in this together.
And that's a beautiful thing about being in a small studio and starting out, is that like, oh, these people care about me. They want to get that product out. Yeah. And, you just starting out, quote unquote, with the studio, you're trying to put out the best product you can and give them the best product that you can record for them, so that, they're going to help you bring in more business. Because essentially the best thing you can have is word of mouth to other musicians and artists. Hey, go record at Ginger Cat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And thankfully, what I have heard from most people as far as like reviews of the studio or whatever, did seem to point in the direction that everybody felt like comfortable, and they felt like I'm not trying to push one way or another, or it's just a matter of like. And I'm also not a fan. A lot of times when it's if I'm like quoting a new project, I do have like an hourly rate, but I kind of end up just making like a package flat deal, because I don't want to be staring at the clock the whole time. I don't want it. I want to make sure that like the money is the money, and I'm going to get them, and I'm going to get the money so I don't need to care about that. I need to care about being present and like making sure that we spend the right amount of time getting the right sound, and just kind of, really diving in and figuring it out, instead of, just looking at the clock the whole time.
So what are you talking about? You mentioned consultations. What do you discuss in a consultation with somebody?
Usually it's like, your typical, like, well, what's the song? What do you got? What are you trying to do? What kind of sound are you looking for? Like, do you have any references? Sometimes people come in like with their guitar and they'll play the song, and they just like kind of want to talk through some ideas. I think kind of the selling point of the whole thing, like I said, is to make sure that we're going to get along, but also because you as the artist need to know that I'm going to be worthwhile. Yeah. That it's really valuable for you to come in, show me the song, and I say, well, we could do this with it, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. I didn't think about that, or something like, okay, this is gonna work out, and you need to know that I know what I'm doing. Right. So it's for you just as much as it is for me. So yeah, they'll come in. Sometimes they have like rough versions of the song recorded, and we can kind of go through it and talk about ideas. And like I said, I tell people I'm as hands off or as hands on as you want me to be.
Right.
If you're looking for somebody to like really, revamp this thing or something, then I can help with that. But if you know exactly what you want and you just want my help making it sound good, I'm here for that too.
That's great, man. I mean, it's. I would imagine though, you probably have people coming in who think they know what they want, and then they're starting to record, and then all of a sudden they're like, I don't like that at all. Because what you think it sounds like in your head, and then all of a sudden when it gets recorded and it comes back, you maybe as the artist, shake your head and go, oh.
Yeah, 100%. That's. I always tell people that you need to let the song be what it wants to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't find that until you're like really in it.
Yeah.
And exactly what you said. There are people all the time. There's a girl I'm working with right now that we are on version 3.0 of this one song. Yeah. But ultimately it was that's just kind of part of the process. We started the song. She had an idea that it was going to be this way, and then it felt like, well, maybe we should go in this direction. And then we went too far in that direction. And then we were like, well, maybe we should do this instead. And now I think we're in a really good place. But yeah, that's how it goes a lot of times. People think that they know what they want. I think also it's a product of not really maybe knowing what the possibilities are.
Right.
You just, especially if you're just someone who like just plays guitar or you play acoustic guitar and you sing at bars or something.
Yeah.
That's the only like world that and so you think that like, well, that's what this song is going to be, and it's like, but what if we put electric guitar on it? Yeah. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, now we could push this into a different direction,
Well, I know when I recorded my EP a couple of years ago, it was intended to be me singing and playing acoustic guitar, and then I threw it over to a bass player friend of mine. I was like, hey, man, why don't you put some bass on this, see what you could do? And he's like, okay. So he records the bass, and I'm like, okay, let me go to my buddy and see if he'll throw some drums on here. And then I'm like, oh, this thing's like, it's not at all what I thought it was going to be. Yeah. And then I'm adding a keyboard player, and I'm throwing in a second round of guitars, and I'm like throwing down. So I'm like, oh, this turned out to be this. Yeah. It's no longer what you thought it was going to sound like. It's completely different. And the artistic process in that vein of what we were just talking about, of like what you start out and what you wind up with, it's completely different once you start recording it. Yeah. Because what you think it sounds like is not necessarily what it's going to sound like later on. Yeah, yeah, and it's important to be able to be objective enough to make that, to be able to make that call. So how often do you find yourself walking that line between I'm the button pressing audio engineer for you just to record and helping somebody produce something? I mean, pretty much every time. It's. You want to say something? Yeah, I mean, it's always a little bit of a game trying to figure out like where is the line. Yeah. And like, because there are a couple of different variables with it. There's what I don't want to happen is for me to suggest something and then they hate that suggestion, and now depending on the person and depending on how the conversation went down, now they may not trust my judgment as much or something like that. Right. And so you have to, and then also you don't want to hurt their confidence. Yeah. So if they're singing something and their voice is breaking up and maybe they're singing it in the wrong register, and I'm like, why don't you try singing it lower? Now they might be thinking, oh, is it because I can't sing it this high? I sound bad singing it this high, and now there's a weird stink in the room. So you got to kind of like play that game a little bit. It definitely depends on the artist. There are some artists that are like wide open books, and they're like, I don't take anything personally. If something sounds bad, tell me it does. Yeah. And then there's some people that are a little bit more delicate, and you have to just kind of tread that line. Yeah. And kind of play that game and see how you can get there. Well, I think it's a weird thing. Like, recording is so strange because, as I said, you don't really know what you sound like. Yeah. Like, for sure. You're playing something, for example, I'll play something on our guitar, and I'm recording it, and I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty good. But when you listen back, you hear all the nuances, how you're striking the strings and the different range of strings that you're hitting. You're not hitting the first couple of strings. You're hitting more, the middle strings, and you're not hitting low. And it all starts to come out. And you're like, oh, okay. So now you have to figure out how that's going to sound. Or, damn, forget about guitar. You're singing. You may not realize as somebody who's singing that you are so pitchy, or that you do a certain inflection every time you sing something that doesn't come off well, Yeah. But doing it live is fine.
Yeah.
But recording is a different animal, and I don't think people really realize how different that is than a live performance.
Yeah, not until you get in the studio. I mean, plus, there's always the thing of like, man, I played this perfect at home, and it's like, oh, but now there's the pressure, and now the pressure can do a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it's why that relationship is so important, to be able to trust your producer or your engineer or whatever other creative forces in the room. You need to be able, you need to know that if I stopped you and said that's not the take, it's because I have your best interest at heart. It's because I know you can do better, and I want you to do better, and I want to help you do better. It's not because I think you suck and I hated that, and it's important to establish like that relationship pretty early on, that like you can trust me. I'm not like out to get you. I'm on your side, and we're going to do this thing together.
So you're recording. I just have to ask, but I'm not asking you to, to spill the beans on anybody. Yeah. Throwing down a click track. How many artists that you work with, how difficult it is for them to play with a click track right away? Is it normally pretty tough? Because a lot of people, I would imagine, do not sit there and practice with a metronome habitually. Yeah. And then you throw on a click track so that you can be like, hey, we've got to add these drums or something later. Do you find that's something difficult for a lot of people?
Not that often. There have been some times where that is a little bit of an issue, and typically what I kind of do in that situation is I will create a MIDI drum beat, and at least that drum beat is locked to a grid. So it's kind of a makeshift click.
Right.
And a lot of times people who have a hard time playing to a click, they have a much easier time playing to a drum set. But for the most part, people have been surprisingly not bad at it, which is tough because a click it's a weird thing to get used to, especially if you've never done it,
Yeah. I mean, I've heard stories of, major artists, and they're like, oh, yeah, we had to bring in a studio drummer or something like that because they couldn't even play to the click track.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, having a drummer that can't play to a click track is a nightmare. And I've had a couple of them where it's like, all right, I'll just edit the crap out of this and hope for the best. Yeah. And it comes out fine. Yeah. But it's still like,
it's an extra layer of work.
You have to know that you're off. Like, yes. It's just so bizarre sometimes. Like, I think you get so into it. You get so, like, when you're doing it for so long, it's like, oh, I hear right away that that's off. And how do you not hear that that's off? It's just so, I don't know. It's just weird sometimes. But
well, I recorded something for a friend, and I sent it to another buddy of mine. If he listens to the podcast, he's probably going to get mad at me, but I don't care. So I sent it to him, and he goes, and we were talking about the recording. He goes, yeah. He's like, was that her, this person, her playing the guitar? Because it didn't sound very on. And I was like, no, man, that was me playing. And he goes, oh, really? I wouldn't have thought, because it's, you're not on timing. And I said, well, let me just put it to you this way. He said, what? I said, I recorded it at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I said, I did it in one take.
Yeah.
And I played straight through.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry if not everything was perfectly lined up with the beat.
Oh, that's so awkward.
And it was a first take.
Yeah.
And it never ceases to amaze me where you could record something. And I've had it happen multiple times where you record something to somebody and you could say, this is a rough edit. Like, yes, I didn't even do it. Don't even mind this. Don't mind that. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, this is off. That's off. You could use some reverb. It did this and that. And you're like, I just told you.
Yeah. I've dealt with that a lot, and it always kind of drives me crazy. It's one of those situations where you have to kind of walk the line, because pretty much all of my projects start off doing like scratch tracks.
Yeah.
And there are some people who fully get that. Most people fully get that, but there are some people who are like, I was a little pitchy on that word. Can I just redo that? And it's like, man, this is, and we end up wasting a bunch of time.
Right.
But also, like, it's almost going to cost more time for me to like stop you than like to just do it. So it's, and I don't want you to be like, to feel terrible about it. So, you know, most of the time it's like, unless it's like way off, you know, it's like, just play through it one time. It's fine if it's a little off in these wonky little places. We're gonna redo it anyway. It doesn't matter, and most people are cool with that. But the vocalists are those are the hard ones most of the time, because it's so vulnerable. If it's off, it's pretty tough to get past.
It is. It's pretty blatant.
Yeah,
like when it's not
for sure.
there.
Yeah.
But again, I think people don't understand. Like, I think when you first get into recording, you think it's all got to be perfect. But you're like, no, man, this is going to get edited like over and over. Like, you might have this trouble on this line, and we're going to cut that, and then we're going to redo it, and then we're going to put that in there. I mean, I don't think people understand like what goes into, particularly digital recording these days. Like how when I told my friend about the recording thing, and he made that comment, I'm like, you don't really understand, man. Like, I didn't record one section and cut it and, loop it 10 times and record it perfectly. I played for 3-4 minutes straight. And I don't care who you are. You play for 3 or 4 minutes straight. Not everything is going to be perfect right on the click.
Yeah.
It's going to come off a little bit.
Yeah. It's a scratch.
That's
what it's for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that happens a lot. But I kind of find that most of the time that happens a lot on the first project that I work on with somebody.
Right.
And then once that comes out and we do a second one, then they're like, okay, I get the process now. Yeah. And they just trust it more, and it goes a lot faster. There's this one guy that I've worked with for years, Kevin Goodwin, who the first time that we worked together, we went through a lot of like, just a lot of different, like, kind of round and round of figuring out how this like process was going to go, and we redid things a bunch of times and this and that. Every project since then, it's like, it's just so quick and easy. It's like, we're both in this rhythm now. We both get how this whole thing goes. And he's like one of the easier people that I work with. But at first there's always this kind of like figuring out like how this is going to be. And like, if something sounds bad and I've never worked with you before,
right.
I don't know that I can trust you yet, you know? So until you prove that trust, sometimes there's some challenges.
Yeah. Well, that's not, again, it's, you're recording artists, and there's a vulnerable area there of like, I've got to trust you, and do you have my best interest at heart as the audio engineer? Are you trying to take me in a different direction? Cause I don't want to go there. Yeah. This is my vision. You know?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, your vision kind of doesn't really fit with what you're trying to do.
Man, that is one of the toughest spaces to be in, is being in a situation where like, because ultimately it's your project.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do, I'm here to help you make it happen. But there are some times where it's like, I think this thing you're doing sucks. And I can't really tell you.
Yes.
Because it's like, I've tried to make my case in the most pleasant way possible, and you clearly want to go this way. So I just have to give in and just kind of follow your lead. But most of the time I really try to like, I try to keep it in a space of like, as we're going, as we're working on things, we might do something, and then I'm like, how are you feeling about this? And most of the time it's like, I think I like it. And it's like, okay, you want to explore further, or do you want to like change anything? Like, how do you feel about the drums? Like trying to check in every once in a while just to like make sure that we're on the right track.
Yeah.
Because, the same way we were just talking, like, well, I think that your direction sucks. he or she may think that my direction sucks. So who's to say that I'm right?
Yeah.
You know, so I just want to make sure that like we are on the same page.
Well, most of the people that you're dealing with, are they new to the recording? Are they new to recording?
Probably
or they've
half and
been
half.
through seasons. Okay.
Yeah,
Because I would think newer people are the tougher ones to work with because, or I should rephrase that. They're either the tougher ones or the easier ones to work with because they don't have the experience to know what's going on, which might make it tough because they have something concrete that they already think is what it's supposed to sound like.
Yeah.
And you with a lot more experience are going, it's not really the way it's going to work. Or you have somebody who's, you know, been experienced and they kind of like, look, man, I just need you to kind of take the back seat and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, hit play for me.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
record as it
Yeah,
were.
pretty much. I mean, there are definitely some people that are more along that route of just like, this isn't my first rodeo. I get the sound that I'm going for. Most of the time in that situation, you can tell pretty early on the people who get it.
Yeah.
And if they, I'm more trying to get on their page. It's like you know what you're doing, so I just want to I want to be able to facilitate that in the best possible way. So,
Right.
Just talk me through your vision, and I'll try to kind of help guide you there in the best way that I can.
Yeah.
But you're right. There, some of the newer people, they're either like, you know, like I said, they don't know what's possible. So
Right.
even just throwing bass on a song is like, whoa. But then there are some people who I don't know. They just maybe there are some people I think that have this notion that, you know, you see all the studio documentaries of the people who spend months and months in the
Yes.
studio, and I think some people think that that's what this is, and it's like you gotta have some kind of idea of what you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if I'll sit here for months and months and explore with you, but I didn't charge you for that. So
Right.
you know what I mean? We gotta be on the same page
Yeah.
from the get-go of what the expectation is.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the newer people they just don't know what the expectation is. They don't know what the process is.
We're not Def Leppard sitting in the studio
Yeah.
recording, you know,
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, writing this track. Yeah, you know they paid a freaking $1 million to record that album.
Right.
You know what I mean? And half of that was studio time.
Yeah, yeah, and that's even a tough line to try to straddle because, you know, like I said, I want to care about the product and I don't want to be like staring at the clock, but at the end of the day, I got to make money. It's a business,
Yeah.
so I have to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
So trying to straddle that line between making money but you not being just a paycheck, sometimes it's kind of tough.
Yeah.
Especially if you do have the project, you know, the best interest of the project at heart. You do want to make sure that you're serving the project, and sometimes that does mean going over things more times than you want to.
Have you run into a situation where there's we've talked about earlier about the consultation, but have you run into situations where you're like, okay, I'm not really sure this is going to be a good fit.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think maybe I'm probably not the best person for you.
For sure. And yeah, there are definitely some people that I have, people that I still continue to work with. Like,
Yeah.
But for this particular project, I'm not the guy. And I can try to be the guy, but I don't think ultimately either of us are going to be happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather just not take it. If you really want me to do it, I'll try, but ultimately, I'm not interested in forcing anything. So
in that situation, whether you take on a project or you don't take on a project, what does that have to do with? Is it the style of music that you're not? I'm not really versed in that style, and I don't want to dip into it. Let's say, look, for off the top of my head, it's a jazz quintet that comes in, and you're like, man, I'd love to do it, but I'm not really up on, you know, recording jazz to make it sound like that. Or is it more a personality thing where you're like, I'd love to record this, I just don't see our personalities, you know.
I haven't run into the
that.
personality thing yet.
Okay.
I think it has more to do with specific things within the work. So I would love to record a jazz quintet.
Right.
But if someone needed my help writing some of the jazz, I'm not the guy.
Right.
I wish I was, but I'm definitely not. And in this particular project, there was one project with a friend of mine who we've worked together for years, but for this one particular project, she wanted more of like a real, almost like an R&B hip hop. Like she wanted me to make the tracks.
Gotcha.
And I've gotten a little bit better I've gotten better about that now. I've gotten better at that now, but back then that was just not my wheelhouse.
Sure.
I can mix it, I can track it, but if you want me to write it and produce it, I'm not the guy to do it.
So would you say, what is your current area of specialty? Is there a certain style of music that you would prefer to work with at Ginger Cat? Or is it like, I will record, like you were saying, I'll record anything, but I'm not the guy to come in and produce this style, and this style. I'll record it and I can do the best job, bang up job doing a recording, but don't ask me to come in and produce it.
I think the only thing that I would be a little out of my element actually recording would be like some really heavy metal or something like that. There's just some really specific things in that genre that have to happen just right.
Right.
That I would do some research and do the best that I could, but I don't know that I would feel super comfortable. But as far as everything else, just recording, I'll do anything. I'd love to just do anything. I love doing like R&B and soul and stuff like that. Really, really gets me going. But I think I have done more so than anything else has been kind of in like the pop indie acoustic rock type of vibe, where it's like it's kind of like pop, but it's like very authentic and grounded and this and that. But I have been doing a bit more like R&B lately, which is really, really fun. I mean, those guys are just the chord progressions they write sometimes are just like, they just blow my mind. And that's a situation where like if you're looking for someone to write that, I'm not the guy. I can point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
But and I would love to learn more on how to do that, but I'll record anything.
That is the funny thing about music, is that you find more and more that people, you think being a musician, you should be able to do X, Y, and Z. But that's really more of a rare breed of a person who can do everything. Even if it is recording, it's like, if you're going to do production, there's people who they specialize in jazz, they specialize in R&B, they specialize in rock or country or what. This is what they do, and that's why they do it so well. But don't go to the country guy to record your death metal album, because they're not going to do a bang up job on it.
Yeah,
you know.
And I think that's. I think, I mean, if I'm being honest, I think a lot of it also has to do with just what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'll do the research and figure out how to like do a jazz album.
Yeah.
Because that would be so cool. And I would love to do that. I don't really care that much about doing a metal album.
Right.
So if I have to, I'll figure it out. But if I don't have to, I'm going to try to avoid it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. I have a buddy of mine, and he has an engineer up in New Jersey that he works with. And he's like, man, he sent me scratch tracks he did. And he's like, here's the guitar. And this guy's been working on before we get the real drummer. And he's done these. And I'm like, man, the drums this guy came up with that he spent just to do scratch stuff with for my friend's recording. I was like, dang.
Yeah.
And then he would send out to other professional musicians who had do drums and stuff, and they'd send the tracks back. I'm like, yeah, but this guy did the engineer who produced it pretty much.
Yeah.
My friend went in with the idea and produced it. I was like, man, this guy you're working with is doing some great work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a lot of value in bringing in the right people and like knowing the right people, having the right team, people that you trust to like, I'm mainly a drummer. I started out on drums. I feel pretty confident on drums, but there are some times where, like, man, getting the right drummer will just save a project, or the right piano player. Also, I mean, sometimes it takes it really takes bringing in real deal professional. I'm a pretty decent guitar player, but there's a couple of guys that I rely on for session work sometimes that are like, I just won't ever play like them. Like they are they just get it more, and you can tell,
Right.
and it's really something special when you can bring together the right people.
Yeah. Well, that's another knack in itself. Knowing the right people for the right job to do session work. I mean, that's not. It's not a thing to be taken lightly. The right drummer, the right guitar player, right bass player who fills in this and does this. Man, that's networking too. Being in the studio business, I'd imagine the right players to bring in for the right job, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't happen all that often that I bring in other people, but if I feel like this needs this thing, then I'll definitely do it. I mean, I have to do it,
right?
Because I can fake most things decently well enough for a production, but like, we had in my own project, we had a song that we wanted a trumpet on, and I had like a really good sounding MIDI trumpet, but it was like just not the same. It was like, we need a trumpet player. We need the nuance of a trumpet player, especially because it was like a solo part, So like, you got to have a real player, and the difference was mind blowing. It was just it was such a different song. It was such a different sound. Like immediately, we were just transported to a different place with that. And it goes back to being objective. It's important as a producer. One of the most important things of being a producer is being objective,
right?
And being able to tell, even with your own ideas, like, no, that sucks. We can't do that. And that happens all the time. Trying to write stuff, trying to do stuff that's like, I thought that was going to work, but it doesn't.
As a musician, I think one of the toughest things is to get out of your own head.
Yeah.
And sit outside the project,
Yeah, for sure.
Particularly if you're recording it. I mean, because you sit when you're listening to it all the time, and after a while, you're either going to hate it or you're going to think it's so genius because you've been listening to it for so much, for so long. And you're not as critical as maybe as you should be.
Yeah. And that happens all the time. And especially like in the earlier years where like you haven't really fully, quote, mastered the art of being objective.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time on something, you get invested in it, and you can convince yourself that something is good pretty easily when you spend hours and hours on it. But you got to be able to be objective enough to pull away from it and say, I had a project recently that we spent a lot of time on this track, and it was a very cool track, and I'm still very proud of it. It's really cool, but ultimately we had to make the decision that it's just not right for you.
Right.
And that's a tough decision to come to, but ultimately you have to be objective. You've got to do what's best. You got to serve the song in the best way that you possibly can.
Sure.
And sometimes that's harder than others. It's easier when the idea genuinely sucks.
Yeah.
But when you have a track, when you have something, or you have a guitar solo or whatever, and it's like, I like that a lot, that's so cool, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's a real bummer.
Yeah, you just never know what you're going to come across, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't really know, and you explore, and you kind of figure out every way not to do it.
Hey, I'm curious, not to change subject, but during the recording thing, are you do you have a network of friends or business associates who also do like have studios around the city? Because I'm really curious how much the studio business has grown in Charlotte. Like not necessarily like big recording studios like Old House or GAT or anything like that, but more like guys like yourself who have built out a space and are kind of doing the Nashville thing, as it were.
Yeah. I have a couple, I think literally two, that I know of that they have not gone to the length of building something, but have outfitted their house to be like a real space.
Right.
Mostly it's home studio guys. Well, I'm a home studio guy. I more so mean like bedroom studio guys, you know? That seems to be more the trend, and I know a lot of people that are doing that and doing really good stuff with it.
Yeah.
But as far as building building out a real studio, it doesn't seem to be happening as often, because mine mostly came from the idea that I needed somewhere to put all my crap.
Yeah.
You know, I ran out of space. If I could have stayed in that space and have it been effective, maybe I would have. And I think a lot of people, I do have one friend who, he and his wife are in a band together, and they've kind of outfitted their house to kind of be a recording space. And it's great. It's a very vibey space. It feels like home. It feels comfortable. It's really cool because it is a home. It's their home.
Sure.
But yeah, I know I've come to find a good amount of people who do home recording, but the like instrumentalists, you know, like the trumpet player I mentioned, you know, he does home recording so he can supply session tracks for people.
I'm real curious to see how things progress in Charlotte, just because there's a real push to make Charlotte more and more of a music town.
Yeah, it seems like it.
And so I'm
cool.
really interested to see how this progresses. I mean, just since I've been here since 2009, the music scene has really grown, but I know there is a push.
Which is weird because it feels like it dipped for a minute.
Yes.
You know, with like Amos is closing down and all of that, it feels like it kind of, and now it feels like it's on its way back up.
Well, the problem I see in Charlotte right now, just as far as the music scene is, and I'm in it, so I mean, like, I have no qualms because I'm making extra money doing it, is a cover scene.
Yeah.
It is not an original music scene.
Yeah.
So if you come, you know, or you're in Charlotte, chances are if you want to make money doing it, you're going to be playing covers or in a cover band or a tribute band or something along the lines.
Yeah.
You are not going to be able to hash it out here doing original music unless
tough.
You are recording it and putting it, you know, straight online and maybe leaving Charlotte to go somewhere else to perform it, because there's not very many venues, if at all, that you can go sit and perform original music and get paid, you know, a couple $100 for the night, or let's say $1,000 for the band to play.
You got to really be something special.
Yeah.
I mean, and they do exist, but it's pretty few and far between.
Yeah.
Most of the original scene is like the Noda scene.
Yeah.
You know, it's much more like kind of underground in a way, which has its benefits. It's a cool setup, but it is a little discouraging to kind of look around and feel like, well, where am I going from here, though? You know, unless I'm like really, really. I mean, it takes a lot for an original artist in Charlotte to draw a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple of them, but it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I know, like, and they've been around for years, like the Sponge Tones. They older guys, but they have a following, you know, because they've been doing this for 30 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. And when they go play the Muse or wherever they play, they get a massive crowd to come to hear them.
For sure.
But a younger band just starting out, I think that it's a little tougher.
It is.
But that is one of the reasons I love recording, is because you can do your thing and develop and put it out in the world. And then hopefully maybe at some point you can say, hey, I've got this body of material where I can support 45 minutes of music, or, you know, an hour long show, you know, and do my thing for maybe opening for somebody, or being the main act that people come to see.
Yeah. It is really great in that aspect to have a thing that you worked so hard on, that you've created, and you have a physical copy of, and you can do something with it. I do feel also a little bit on the flip side that it's equally as discouraging in a different way, that, you know, you look out and see an ocean of other artists trying to do the exact same thing. And similar to like getting a crowd in Charlotte to come out to an original show, you got to be something special. You also have to be something special to make it on the internet.
Yeah.
You know, you got to like really bring something to the table or really know how to work the business. And that's tough.
I think that's the modern age of music. I mean, I think we, as I wouldn't even just say, let's just say Western society for a minute. We went through a golden age of music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like from, let's just say, the 40s
Mm-hmm.
to the early 2000s, maybe.
Yeah.
And now with the advent of technology, it is essentially the Wild West.
Yeah.
Because everybody can go out and everybody can record. It's not all going to be good.
Right.
But there's probably a lot of good stuff out there that you might not know about until you've checked out. And
Sure.
you're like, damn, there's a lot of people who are great. They're just not out there touring and doing all the stuff that they can do. The same way you find somebody on YouTube, you know, that you like a YouTuber, you know, all of a sudden one day you find, you're like, I had no idea this person was out here doing this. This is pretty cool. I like what they've got to say.
Yeah.
So it's real interesting to see where that brings, because can music translate into dollars? And when I say the golden age, I'm like, I don't know if there's going to be very many artists anymore that are going to be making Taylor Swift money.
Yeah.
Because Taylor Swift, as a quote unquote new artist, has already been at it 10 or 12 years.
Right.
So she's already cultivated fans.
Yeah.
I mean, her tour just sold $1 billion, $1 billion tour, and she's got a movie, and people are flocking in theaters because she cultivated that young fan base who will probably be following her as she's into her 50s and 60s. Oh, Taylor Swift, I've been following her for 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That just doesn't really exist anymore.
And that's the curiosity. What is it? Is it kind of done?
Yeah.
Or is there going to be
It's
massive pop stars?
It's a great question. I do think we're in an interesting space. You know, I think because producing and engineering has become so much more accessible to so many more people aren't really needing record labels as much as they used to.
Right.
And so I think you are seeing a lot more independent artists that are kind of breaking through, where as like, you know, there were other times where it was like you really needed record label push.
Yeah.
Especially in like, you know, the mid 2000s, where it was like, it was impossible unless you had some kind of advertising. And now it's kind of getting to a point where like, as long as you know how to work the business, which in the age of the internet, all of that information is accessible if you want it. And you can make your record for, you know, pennies in your bedroom.
Right.
And there are people I've heard on the radio that were like, this is an indie artist and they are making a lot of money, who did not have a record label push, and somehow they broke through. I don't know how, somehow they broke through.
Yeah.
But so I'm interested to see what the record label artist relationship looks like coming into this age where everything is easy to do yourself.
I don't know. I mean, that's going to be so interesting to see, because I don't even see some of these younger bands being able to do major draws.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's off a topic for our studio stuff, but I mean, how are these younger bands going to make draws when you've got bands like the Rolling Stones or these 80s hair bands doing massive tours of stadiums?
Yeah.
But the young bands I see, like I went to go see the Struts at the Fillmore. Great band. Oh my God, they were killer.
Yeah.
But they were at the Fillmore. They weren't at PNC, filling PNC, where they probably, if it was the 80s, a band of that level would have graduated to fill, you know, a Spectrum Center or something like that. But they're playing smaller theaters. Not that that's bad. Like if they can play smaller places like the Fillmore and pack it out every time, they're doing great.
Yeah.
But the interesting is are there going to be artists, or are they going to have to do package tours with 3 or 4 other bands to fill a PNC or something like that that's around? And that'll be a $1 million question.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. I don't know what the music industry looks like in the future. I feel like we are in this weird transition, like trying to find where we are, period. everyone's trying to figure out what the next move is. It doesn't feel like anybody really knows.
No,
Even genre, you in any other era of music, a lot of times you can point to like that's what was popular at that time or whatever.
Sure.
Nowadays, it seems all over the map, which is great.
Yeah.
But it just still kind of feels like we're still finding our footing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully there'll be this one band or that one artist that comes through and just kind of like busts through everything, and everybody goes, "Oh,
yeah,
that's it." Because now, look, when I was younger, it was hard rock, heavy metal. That was the thing, and that was it through to the late '80s, and then grunge came in, and even though that was still hard rock, it was a different style, and then that came through, and then that brought along rap, and then rap dominated through the '90s and the into the 2000s, and now I understand rap has sold less, which means country is the new thing, and that has really gone through.
Yeah, it's very weird. I actually heard recently that for the first time ever, they're playing country music in the UK.
Wow.
Which has like never been a thing, but for some reason country has always kind of been like one of the bigger selling genres, even though it's so like particular.
Yeah.
It's not it doesn't what's the word? It's not easily accessible for everyone. Pop you can kind of put on any radio station.
Yeah.
But country is such a particular audience, but these country artists are selling out stadiums.
I don't think they're country artists in the true sense of the word.
No,
anymore.
I don't.
I think it's pop,
I agree.
rock.
I agree with
kind
you.
of thing.
I think I was just talking to a future client the other day about this, how the country genre has weirdly gone in a weird direction of pop, like you said, pop, rock, even some hip hop elements with a country accent.
Yeah.
And that's country now for some reason. But you've still got the Chris Stapletons and that are pushing through, but they're few and far between.
Yeah. I think there's just, as you said before, it's just all over the map right now, and I'm not really sure anything is codified into one particular sound. And there'll be somebody who comes along and does that. The funny thing now, I heard Alice Cooper say it was nice to see that rock is now a subgenre again. It is not the main style. It is like a small subgenre cult following, as it were. Yeah. As it when it originally started, it's not the predominant thing anymore.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit of the hope when Billie Eilish pushed through. It was like, this is definitely something different. Right. This is someone who's taking a risk. And she made so much money. It clearly paid off. It was an interesting sound. And I think it's going to take some more people like that who are like kind of pushing a little bit and doing something interesting to kind of figure out where we're going.
I just saw this young rock act, and they opened up for the Struts. They were called Max Saturn. Mm-hmm. I love these guys. They were like and I had never heard anything like it. Maybe there are 10 other bands like it. I don't know. But they were like a rock disco band. Like that's what they reminded me of. They had some disco, and I was like, man, my God, these guys got a great vibe. Mm-hmm. So I wish them much success.
Yeah, there is a little bit of like a disco movement going on at the moment within like. Dua Lipa really pushed a lot of that forward. A lot of her music is very like disco influenced. Yeah. But there's a lot of that kind of bubbling on the surface of a lot of stuff that I've heard recently. There's some like disco drums, or maybe a disco progression, or some strings that feel kind of disco, which is cool. That's a cool vibe. Rock disco is. That's right up my alley. That sounds like it would be a lot of fun.
So doing the studio work and producing and recording, or do you try to keep your finger on the pulse of what's currently happening too?
Not as much. I kind of. Yes and no. There are certain genres that I care a lot about that
Right.
I'm always like just in and listening to. So I come up on things. But when I mentioned that I left my full-time job earlier this year.
Yeah.
The job that I was working at involved me needing to like constantly be up on new music
Right.
and searching for new music all the time.
Yeah.
So when I was doing I kind of got almost a little burnt out on that. So I kind of took a dip once I took the job. It's like I told my wife at some point, a song came on the radio that I hadn't heard, and I was like, it's so nice for me to not know this song, because it used to be my job to know it before it came out.
Sure.
So I kind of took a step back from like pushing myself so hard to like know all this music.
Yeah.
But now I've had the break, and I'm kind of like venturing back out, and man, there's just no better feeling than like discovering an artist that's like that you really that you really jive with.
Yeah.
I just love that. But so I try to kind of dig into certain genres, but I fall short on a lot of genres for sure.
Yeah, I think it's hard to keep up with, especially given today's
Definitely.
The expanse of the music
Yeah.
scene and
Yeah.
recording and
Speaking
whatever's
of country,
out there.
I don't know anything about country. I don't hate. I mean, like traditional country or whatever.
Yeah.
I definitely don't hate it. It's just not really the thing that I like gravitate towards. So I just never know anything about it.
I like older country,
Mm-hmm.
but the newer stuff is just it's not for me. It's just not.
Yeah.
I'm not a big pop music person, so if you throw in country with pop, it's just not like,
Yeah.
it's already
Yeah.
not my thing,
Right.
So given that I can like some old country, but
Yeah.
it's not my thing, and pop is not my thing. Put the two things together, it's definitely not my
Yeah.
thing.
For sure.
So
For sure. And there's a way to do like, I mean, with any genre, it's like there. Even though I might not be into that genre. If it's done in a certain way, I can definitely get into most things.
yeah,
Country, hip hop. I'm not really a hip hop guy either, but there are definitely some people that it's like I recognize that this is definitely something special,
yeah,
and it's cool. But sometimes I just can't stand to feel like I can't stand to feel like something is a product. And I feel a lot of that in the country genre at the moment. There's a lot of like, not to say that this guy isn't actually singing, but it
Sure.
just doesn't feel real to me.
yeah. But I think that's been the case no matter what style of music
True.
it is.
Oh,
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, what is it? What are the kids like?
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up. That happened in the '80s with hair metal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like slap some makeup on, get some long hair,
Yep.
strut them around in leather. That's it. That's the thing. Go get this. Oh, it's grunge. Put those guys out in shorts. Throw a flannel on them.
Yeah.
Unkept hair. Bam. That's the thing. Rap. Great. All rappers, you have to have a chain on. You have to have a gold chain. You have to wear these kind of shoes. That's the style. Go
Yeah.
out there and do that. Oh, country. You got to have a southern twang. It doesn't matter if you don't really have a southern twang. Can you sing like that?
Yeah.
Great.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, that's been a thing as long as music has been a thing, I think.
yeah.
So it's I agree, it's not really for me. I think it's very rare that I gravitate towards something like that. If it sometimes songs are catchy and that's fine, but I'm not gonna buy the record,
But that's a something right there. Is from a production and recording quality. You have to think about it differently. You have to look at it and say, what are they doing? How do
Yeah.
they get that sound?
True.
Because there is pop music has an art to it of recording that, getting in that sound.
Definitely.
That is an art itself.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's always kind of part of the game, because you do have to kind of stay up, even if I'm not staying up on the most current songs of the genre because I want to know what the music is. I do still need to stay current on like what the current like sonic trends
Yeah.
are and what's cheesy and what's like, because if I'm not staying up on it, I may do something that I think is cool, and it's like, yeah, we were doing that like 5-6 years ago, and you sound out of touch, you know. So
or
you got to
cool enough and it sounds retro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I don't, I don't know. I stay as up to date as I need to.
Yeah,
I guess.
Man.
Yeah.
It's music is a never ending thing. There's always something to learn.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's playing an instrument. I don't care if it's recording.
Yeah.
There's always something that you need to pick up on. And from the recording area aspect, just like you said, you keeping up on what that trend is of what that sound and how do I get that sound? Because somebody might come into the studio and say, I want to get this sound. And you got to be like, okay, how do I get that?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a project a couple of months ago. It was like one of the most fun projects I've done. He wanted a track that was like, he wanted a song that was very like authentic early 80s R&B dance.
Right.
So I started listening to Michael Jackson's Off the Wall and like trying to like kind of nail that sound.
Yeah.
And that's exactly like what you're talking about. It's like you've got to find, okay, I want that sound. Okay, how do I get that sound? Okay, let's start with the drums. What are those drums? How do I get that, I think it was a little easier back then. Things were a little more simple. Nowadays, listening to some of the new stuff that they have now, it's like they've got these, unless you have those samples,
right?
It's like, it's almost a crapshoot trying to figure it out. But you can at least figure out, okay, this is what the low end is doing.
Right.
And the high end is sparkly in this particular way or whatever. And you can kind of at least fit in at the party, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole area of stuff that you have to learn. I mean, just being in that studio, man. I mean, that's,
yeah.
There's some homework to do, I guess.
Always, there's always some homework to do, and that's just part of it. But that's also part of the fun. You know? It is really exciting when it's like when I did that track, and you're like, I've never done anything like that. But then when I figured it out, I was like, oh, this is actually like really good. Like, I think this is actually good. I think I'm actually doing this. Yeah. Which is cool, because I think sometimes along the way when you do things for so long, you kind of lose that sense of discovery. Yeah. So it's cool. It is cool when you're able to like recapture that.
It is exciting, man. I mean, just learning in general. I mean, one of the things I always just try to do is be a lifelong learner. Yeah. I mean, I'm not that guy who's just going to be like, I come home from work and I just sit and I watch TV and that's my life. I can't do it. I've got to, keep learning, getting better. And I think music has been that push for me. Yeah. To do it.
Yeah. I am someone who, I have a habit of, when I get into something, I get very into it. And I get I wouldn't say obsessive, but there are definitely some occasions where somebody would probably argue with me that it is obsessive, that I look up all the information I can and I just want to learn this and that. And I want to like be as good as I possibly can at it because I'm into this thing at this time. And music is the only, I've had a lot of trends or I've had a lot of hobbies and fads that have kind of come and go. Yeah. Music is the only thing that has like been a constant that I haven't gotten bored with. I can't imagine I ever will. And like you said, there's always something like new to learn and it's always evolving. So
yeah, it's a never ending process. One of my friends said, I figured it'd probably take him about 300 years. Yeah. He said to figure out, to learn everything I want to learn about music. Yeah. It's never ending. I mean, whether it's a different style you get into, whether it's a jumping off and learning a different instrument, getting into recording, as soon as you go down one, as soon as you veer off the road and go into something else, that opens up a whole world of possibilities in another direction. So yeah, absolutely. And you got to be open to those different directions, Yeah. Because it's an easy way to kind of fall into extinction is just not. It's just saying like, well, this is what I do and this is what I'm comfortable doing. So I'm just going to keep doing that. And I'm not going to, you got to be open-minded. And you got to be open and objective enough to accept that you may not
you don't know all that you think you know, maybe,
Yeah.
you know, that ultimately we're all just dummies trying to make sense of music, I guess. And some people kind of stumble into success along the way.
Yeah. Well, we're here for a short time. I mean, I think music is a wonderful endeavor
Yeah.
to spend your life chasing getting better.
Uh-huh.
You, as long as you go into it knowing you are never going to learn it all.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, you can even people who know who are like obsessive about music theory and know all of the ins. It's like that still only gets you so far.
Yeah. They only know that one aspect,
Right.
that one lane.
Yeah,
Like I said, I mean, you might learn everything about the theory, like you're saying, but then you go off and you say, "Hi, I'm going to learn about this recording thing."
yeah,
That's a whole nother road in itself.
exactly. I mean, that's how it happened with me. You know, I don't know that I would have ever even thought to do recording until we went into the studio, and then I was like, "Oh, this is pretty rad."
Yeah.
So, and thankfully, the guy was nice enough that you know, where would I be if he wasn't? So,
Absolutely,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Well, Chris, man, it's been great talking with you. How do we get in touch with you at Ginger Cat Sounds?
I've got, you can go to the website, gingercatsounds.com.
Yeah.
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, all of the social medias at just whatever/gingercatsounds.
All right, I'll make sure I
made it.
link to everything in the show notes.
Yeah,
Maybe
great.
check it out. All right, Chris, man, thanks for coming by.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome having a conversation with you today.
Yeah,
Take
as
care, man.
always.
Thanks for listening to episode 68 of the QCMP, and I hope you'll go back and check out past episodes. And if you can be so kind as to leave a review, I'd greatly appreciate it. You can find the QCMP on all your favorite streaming platforms. As always, if you have an idea for an episode or would like to be a guest on the QCMP, reach out to me at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out our local partners, Records on the Wall at rexonthewall.com, Reporting from 20XX at reportingfrom20xx.wordpress.com, Queen City Live at Instagram.com/Queen City Live Music, and Charlotte New Music at charlottenewmusic.org. Thanks again for listening, and get out there, support some of these local artists that we have here in Charlotte. Take care.